Hello, all. Welcome to our second of the many webinars that AskSheldon is hosting. The objective of these webinars is to burst some of the myths about college admissions, hear it from the experts on how to take you from being confused to being confident and simplify the admission process. My name is Lavanya Reddy, founder and CEO of AskSheldon, a college counselor app that can help students, parents, and counselors navigate through the college counseling by providing support via identifying the right college fit, helping with essay reviews, and getting the right financial aid and scholarship. I will be moderating this webinar. The format of this webinar is very simple. We'll have a 45-minute panel discussion with our panelists, and then I'll open it out to Q&A for the audience. If you have any questions as follow-ups to the responses of the panelists, please feel free to post in the chat, and I will ask them on your behalf. The session will be recorded and shared post the webinar. And today's webinar will be focused primarily on essays, UC PIQs, and beyond. I'd like to kick off the session by introducing our first panelist, Amy Battisti. She started her career as a high school English teacher and track coach in Rhode Island. She later earned her master's degree from Providence College in Education and School Counseling. Amy spent the next 2 decades working to support students as a school counselor in a large urban public school district. She focused on changing the way support was delivered to students who often experienced barriers to their educational success, including socioeconomic and language challenges. Amy also worked very closely with other school administrators to create career and technical pathways that allowed students more access to dual enrollment courses that were aligned with their career aspirations. Amy is currently on the administrative team at Notre Dame High School in San Jose as a director of student life. She continues to work hard to create systems that create access and equity for all students. Kudos to you, Amy, and for everything that you do. We are eternally grateful and welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here today.
So let's kick off with the first question that's top of our minds. What is the main goal or purpose of the Common App essay versus the UC PIQs? How do you see them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that sometimes, right, students are thinking of them as very similar. Just one has more word count and the other has a shorter word count, but they're actually very, very different. The goal of each of them. So the Common App essay, best way I can kind of tell students to think about it, it's a deep dive into a single meaningful experience where you really, really want to highlight, personal growth through your story. I tell students, think of it as like an arc, right? So we want to pay attention to setting, we want to pay attention to emotion, and then reflection at the end. And again, with the word count, you have a space to do that. UCPIQ is totally different, right? So we're talking about contextual information, tangible examples that are going to support your claims. So I just say to students, right, you want to think about we're responding to your four PIQs as like you're giving supporting evidence on what the prompt is that you're going for. So one is a lot more personal. The goal, I'm going to learn a lot more about you and how you write, and it's going to be a lot more natural, your language. And the other one is going to be very sort of contextual, get to the point, jump in, jump out.
Even though it says PIQ, which means personal, right?
Yeah, I know.
On that note, I'd like to introduce our second panelist, Shilpa Parekh. Shilpa is an alumna of Carnegie Mellon University's Tepper School of Business and holds a BS in Computer Engineering from the University of Michigan. She currently serves as a reader for the University of Michigan undergrad admissions team and is an active mentor to engineering undergraduates, supporting students as they navigate their academic and professional journeys. With over 25 years of leadership experience in the biotech and healthcare industries, Shilpa brings a unique perspective to admissions, blending her professional expertise with deep commitment to education, mentorship, and student success. And as I said, Shilpa, I don't know how you do it all, being a mother and a professional, and also being a mentor to the students. Welcome, Shilpa. But what I missed in your intro is that you're also a fabulous mom of two wonderful kids, a junior at UC Berkeley and a junior at Menlo Atherton High School.
Thank you.
So let's get into the one of the first questions I had for you. When reading essays, what do you look for in the first few sentences that students should be aware of?
So for me, I read so many applications and not all in one night or all in one week or even all in one month, right? It's a complex process. And I think for folks like me who do reading, that's something I urge students to really think about is that, a particular reader could be reading this, in the morning, could be reading it in the middle of the month, could
Yeah.
be reading it after I've had a significantly bad day in the office, right? And I have to say, of all the million things that I do, and not all well, I am always very excited to sit down with a pile of applications and read essays. It's almost my solitude, and it's just my time to myself, where I just have some fun. And so the advice that I give students and parents is that the first couple sentences really have to pull me in, right? It's about a hook. Give me a hook. Don't repeat the question. Get right into it. Tell me something unique. Tell me something funny. Tell me something odd. Even tell me something like crazy that makes me frown. And that's really what I say is tell me something that's going to make me make a face. Like, right? And it's so I am excited to read on. I'm looking for something unique. I'm looking for that hook. I'm looking for your voice and how you're telling it, even before I read the rest of it. And
Mhm.
I have to say, with me personally, those are the essays and those are the students and the candidates that bubble to the top. Keep in mind, as a reader, we do not see your name, where you live, what school you go to. I have no idea what your grades are or your SAT. All that I'm given are either the Common App essay or the supplemental essay, and sometimes not even all of them. It may just be one of them, maybe two or three, and that's it, right? So it's very interesting that you almost have to take each and every essay that you write very seriously, think about the topic and what it is you're trying to communicate. And I know in my home it was always very difficult to get my son, who's at UC Berkeley, to actually share his essay with anybody other than mom at midnight, which is here edited. And that was always very stressful. But if you share it with your family or your friends or someone that you're close to and see what reaction they have,
Right.
if they have kind of a reaction, then you did a good job. If they're like, yeah, it's good, but they didn't really have a reaction, that means it might not bubble to the top and help you differentiate yourself. Sorry for the long answer. I hope that's helpful.
So that's helpful. But any essay that really that you could recollect and you like that really left a deep mark in my
Yes, and
experience.
I knew you were going to think of that. You were going to say that, and I was thinking about that while I was driving home. And I have to say that, and now I don't even remember what year or whatever it was, but I had one essay one time where the very first line was, "My most favorite activity is to look through garbage."
I'm sorry, that's the reaction you got from me.
And look, there's the reaction, right? It was like, what? Right? And this was a person that was applying to the University of Michigan. So very top school. And that was their first line is I love to look through and collect. It would something to do the way you wrote about garbage. And it was like, I read every paragraph and every sentence.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this is very interesting. What does this person actually want to do? And what do they want to study? And why?
Wow, that is definitely a hook. That would keep me going as
I
well.
don't know what happened. I don't know if he got in or didn't get in or whatever. And I didn't even know. Sometimes you don't even know in the essay whether they're male or female. You kind of know based on maybe what they might be talking about, but otherwise you don't know.
Right, absolutely. So, Amy, let's. I would want to go back to the Common App versus the PIQ question. Besides the word count being different,
Mhm.
what is the difference in structure or tone from the Common App essay and the PIQ that you look at?
Yeah. So when I think of those two things very much together, right? So go back to the essay. So when I'm thinking of the essay, it's much more open-ended, the structure. I'm definitely gonna agree with my fellow presenter with the idea of you have to capture the attention from the reader with a hook. It's super, super important in the essay. I always say to my students, when I was an English teacher on the weekend, I would sometimes read maybe 50 or 60 essays, and they would get very arduous, and that was 50 or 60 because they kind of would get sometimes repetitive. Now imagine that times an admissions person who's reading, piles and piles of 50s and 60s. So, right. So you've got to do something, especially, right, if it's in the middle of that block of time that somebody's going to be reading, right, to get them. So, yeah, you definitely want to think of that like opening, capture the attention. That hook is super important, right? Um, with the structure of a PIQ, you're thinking about it as more structure and direct, right? You don't have as much time. The simplest way I can kind of boil it down for students is think of a PIQ when you're writing that as like you're having an interview, like someone's asking you a question
Mhm.
and you want to answer the question completely because it's an interview and they need to know about you, but you've got to do it in a pretty short amount of time because maybe it's an hour interview and you've got 15 questions. So that's kind of a different way to think about the structure of the two of them. As far as tone, again, in an essay, when I'm reading someone's essay for the Common App, I want it to be personal. I want to be able to hear like their voice. It can be conversational, and I like that. I feel like they're almost like telling me the story themselves, like I'm sitting there and they're telling me the story. A real authentic voice comes through when someone does that. I like to hear a little bit about, again, their backstory, what was the challenge that they had, and then like that nice resolution, again, that arc. Where again, you go back to that PIQ, you think about an interview and it's straightforward, but it's very informative, right? So I'm saying less personal, and I know it's funny because it's got that in the name of it, but because it's about the author, but it's very, very informative and it's clarifying. So when I finish it, I have a very, very distinct understanding of exactly the answer to that question. Where an essay, I might actually think about and say, I'm not even totally sure at the end of that, like where they landed. I just loved like that adventure they went on, right? So those to me are like the two differences in the structure and the tone of those two different types of writing.
Absolutely. I love it. Love it. That's great, Amy. One of my friend actually he was mentioning about how his son got into NYU, and his story was about not a success story, but it was about a failure story. How
Mm.
he picked a computer science course in his junior year, and he absolutely sucked at it. Yet he learned a way to say computer science is not for me, and I'd rather go a pre-med route. And he kind of proved or disproved the theory to himself. So people believe essays are all about writing something good about themselves or where I was successful, but it could go either ways. And he said that essay got him into his college of
Yeah,
choice.
yeah.
So I absolutely agree with you. Shilpa, when we talk about defining authentic voice, as you said, like what is that hook and what is that authentic voice, how can students achieve it, especially given the era of the chat GPTs of the world? And we've been haunted for it for almost 2 years. And I'm sure you folks have a method to the madness of saying, is this an authentic voice versus this is a chat GPT voice, etc. What do you recommend, Shilpa, that we build that in the students' essays that they can really work on it?
Yeah, so I think that's a very, very important question, right? And every year it becomes more and more important to understand what it is that OpenAI is generating, right? And
Mhm.
I have to say that, over time, people are going to get very experienced to be able to quickly observe if you wrote it or, an AI engine wrote it. But for me, it's the same things I would say as a few years ago. What makes something authentic to me is I like to see some dialogue. The dialogue is very cool. It says something about you, right? It could make me laugh, or it could just make me think, And it really makes me kind of take a step back and picture, right, what this person is trying to communicate. I remember reading an essay again, like some of these stick out of my mind. It was something about, and I don't even remember what the name was, but somebody was writing about the fact that they hated their first name.
Oh,
And therefore, they decided to use their middle name. And you may have heard a lot of kids do that, and it's not necessarily because they hate their first name. But this kid basically opened up the sentence by saying, I hate my first name. And so and he used dialogue all the time through the whole kind of essay with his middle name, like, and I'll just make something up right now, like Bob, right? And I'm sorry if there's any Bobs in here, but it's just like Bob. And it was almost like he was so happy that someone was calling him Bob because that was his middle name, right? So it's things like that, which is, I'm going to say dialogue is one. I think another one that is one that colleges actually highlight, or at least Michigan used to highlight to us as a reader, is really make sure that the person is in their essay showing you what happened and making you feel part of the experience versus telling you, right? And what does that mean? I mean, it's simple things like, don't tell me that you were sad and that, you were very upset. But instead, tell me that when you came home and you were called by your first name, it just made you cry. Because that tells me that you were sad and it didn't go well, right? For whatever reason. So it's that showing versus telling. I think the dialogue in this chat GPT world is going to be really important. Although I don't really use chat GPT and haven't come yet with my pile of applications yet, but soon, right? I don't know what I don't know if ChatGPT shoots out dialogue, but I can't imagine that it's putting out dialogue necessarily. And if it is, it's not going to be necessarily authentic to you.
Right.
right. So
Right?
Shilpa, it does because I've seen it, and
Does
thankfully
it?
right now it's not done particularly well.
Okay, that's
But
good.
my fear is we're gonna blink and it'll
And
get
it's going to
much
happen,
better.
and it absolutely
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
And I just think that the showing versus telling, the dialogue, anything that will help the reader put themselves in that room, in that space, in that situation, whether it's a trip that you're talking about or an experience, is very important. And then the third thing that I would say is very important is, what did that experience do for you? How did it make you grow? Or how did it make you more curious? Or how, even if that it did nothing for you and it was a waste of time, but you remember it such that you are saying, this is the type of experience, right, that I can now capitalize on and know what not to do type thing. So again, dialogue, showing versus telling, and what it meant to you.
And I want to actually call out a random kind of act of kindness that Shilpa actually did for me is she spent an hour with my son, kind of giving him a structure of and the framework of what the essay should look like. And I'll flex a little bit here. Thank you, Shilpa. But I'll also flex that Ask Sheldon does that very well too. We only focus on the framework without actually writing the essays. So if parents are looking for any kind of framework, please feel free to use Ask Sheldon. But Shilpa, thank you. Neil actually has worked on that structure and the framework, and he's written what is written. But yes, bring our authentic self to the table and show versus tell. Thank you for that. Amy, quickly again, moving again, since kids are switching gears, writing common apps versus PIQs, and the deadlines are coming up soon. I think UC's got moved out a bit, but not too much. And then there's always a context switching. What is the difference in tone? And we're talking about authentic voice here. What is the difference in tone that you recommend that the kids should put in for common app versus PIQs?
Yeah, so I mean, again, it's so funny. Shilpa, I wish I could take a picture of. We have this huge whiteboard in the office where students come for us to work on their essays, and we have essays, and then we have like this section for supplementals, and under the essays, we have this giant thing that says "Show, don't tell." Like, literally, it's in huge. So anybody listening to this or reads it later, like I can't emphasize that enough. That's so important, and we
So
talk.
funny.
Yeah, you're trying to transport that reader with your language into like the time and the place of whatever's happening. So I just was laughing because I was like, I wish I could have forecasted you were going to say that. I would have brought a picture, but yeah, I mean, again, when I think of tone and I think of that structure, right? You're going to just be. I love that. I love the tip that Shilpa said about like using dialogue. I mean, the word I jot down when I thought about it was like conversational, right? I want it to feel like I'm literally sitting there listening to you tell me that story. And that's the tone that really should come through in that essay. It really should just be reflective of the author's voice. And again, we said it kind of in the beginning. I think some students get really stuck in like, I have to write about a big struggle, and other students are like, I don't want to write about a struggle because I don't want them to like know X or Y about me. There is no right or wrong on that at all. It's the story that you want to tell. It's the personal story that you want to tell, and really kind of draw out like the personal qualities throughout the telling of that story that we're going to learn about you when we get to the end of that, right? And then we shift back to these much sort of shorter and more concise things. And yeah, we want to be careful that we're answering the question. We want to be careful that we're still being interesting, right? Because we still have our reader who's got the stack of stuff and they need to read. So even though sometimes people think it's shorter, that it doesn't need to be interesting, it does. But you just always want to go back to like, is my tone very straightforward and very informational? Which is different, right? When I want to read somebody's like just like the story in their essay, right? They really are very, very different. Clarity of purpose in the supplemental of a PIQ versus just kind of like just
Absolutely.
more creative, right? More creative on the essay side.
I absolutely agree, Amy. Shilpa once mentioned that of the 100 applications she would read, she would have to filter out and narrow it down to three. And that's a very hard task to do, especially when the topics, what kind of topics you get, what's a prompt. And I've looked at the prompt for Common App and PIQs and everything this year. Shilpa, are there any essay topics or prompts you see too often that you feel do not make any impact or are very redundant and repetitive, and you really can't use that to differentiate and pick those top three applicants as you mentioned? Are these is anything that stands out?
So I don't know all the people that are listening, and I'm going to answer this, and I don't want to offend anybody. But one of the prompts that doesn't sit well with me is that prompt about struggle. Okay. So many things have happened over, oh my God, the last 5 years, right? Between COVID and, now things that we're seeing that we haven't seen before, given a new administration and changes. There's a lot going on. And, I live in Menlo Park. I don't know, again, all the people on this call, but I would really ask yourself that when you talk about a struggle, really think about if how that struggle compares to a struggle that, somebody could be talking about that maybe lost a parent
Right.
during COVID or something like that. And I'm not trying to say something is more important than something else, but it's like when you get a group of well-to-do kids who have grown up relatively well and they start talking about a struggle, it is very hard to differentiate. I hate that prompt. They should not be
Yeah.
given that prompt to certain readers in certain zip codes, unfortunately. I used to always steer my son away if he had a choice to answer that prompt or answer a different one. I would say don't answer that one because you don't know what reader is going to get that.
Right.
And a reader that might get that might say, I did get that prompt sometime during COVID, and I don't remember what year. And people all said, most of the kids said the hardest thing they struggled with was getting on Zoom. It was the hardest thing to do. Now, yes, it was hard, and it was hard for everybody. But the point I'm trying to make is how do you differentiate your hardness from your friend's hardness?
Yeah.
It was hard. It was hard to get online. It was hard to sit there and it was hard to learn, but it wasn't different. Right?
Yeah.
So is it really personal to you? It's not. So I would say is if you when you have a choice to pick a prompt, right? And I haven't done this for a couple of years in terms of coaching my own child. So I don't even know what the prompts are at the moment, but I would say steer clear of prompts that make you write about something negative.
Right.
That's all.
Absolutely. And it's so relative. Like even my kid, he tells me, I'm sure you had a different struggle, but my struggle is real too. And I always discount his struggle. His struggle is how do I get to school when it's drizzling or barely raining outside?
Right.
And I'm like, dude, we walked in the rains. We would take multiple buses to get to school. And I come from a third world country, and my struggles were so different. But he's like, I get it, but my struggles are real too. And that is so spot on, Shilpa.
Yeah.
Amy, keeping in a similar vein, how much of personal struggle is too much? When does it stop being effective in the essays?
Yeah. Um, Great question. And I kind of want to jump off what Shilpa was saying because I think what we try to say to students, I don't ever say the line like stay away from the struggle prompt,
I knew.
very similar feelings. But what I because I work in a high school and I don't want to get fired. What I do say to them is try really hard to not manufacture a hardship that everyone feels because it feels disingenuous and the easiest one to talk about is COVID, right?
Right.
Because and again I go back to think of the reader. If the reader has to hear one more time about how isolating COVID was, and it was, and we still know there are effects on kids nowadays, but like if you're the reader and you're reading that 75 times, it's like, okay, well, 75 of you like say something else. Okay. But where I do want to just say, I think struggle is actually really, really important. And I often will tell my school counselors when they're writing their letters of rec, also to touch on this for a student, and also this could be important for a student, is when you need to tell the story of something on the transcript. So like if the transcript all of a sudden like just falls off the face of the earth and there is a significant reason why, I as a reader like I want to know that, right? Like what happened? And you know to Shilpa's point, like was there a significant death in the family or like some horrible accident or something? And in that sense, that I think that's the space and the place where like I actually want to know that. It gives me a lot of information about you, and when I'm going to read that I'm going to just know you a lot better versus kind of like that universal hardship thing. Okay, but so go back to the thinking of when is the struggle too much. This is kind of like my easiest way that I'll say to students. They'll come in, they'll say, Miss Patizzi, can you read this essay for me? And I'm reading this essay, they're not sitting with me. Like I'm reading it and they're going to come back and get, some thoughts, some critique, whatever. When they come back in, I say, if it's not me, I'm a total stranger. and I'm the admissions person and I'm sitting here, would you verbally tell me this story? And many times students would say, oh, no, I would not feel comfortable saying that. Well, then don't write it. Like if the struggle is too much, if like you are crossing a line, if you wouldn't sit with, I'm sitting with Shilpa because I want to get to you, Mish, and I'm not comfortable telling her the story in person, then do not. That is a struggle too far, I would say. And then a couple other things just to think about, right? If you're going to talk about struggle, you got to focus on the lesson, not so much the difficulty, right? And on the board that I've referenced before, we have a little thing that says you can focus on scars, but not wounds. Because if I'm a scar, what you're going to tell me is like kind of relatively quickly what happened, but then you're going to tell me like subsequently, like how you came out on the other side. But if you're deep into like I'm still a victim and like these are my like open wounds, there's some schools that might be like, I don't know if this kiddo is ready to like come to this campus, live by themselves, and be okay. So I think that's another one where struggle is too far. And then I mean, the only other thing I would just say, yeah, is too much focus on, 80% of my essay is the struggle, and then I quick have a resolution. That math should be flipped, right? It's like get in, tell me the struggle, but then spend a long time on like the resolution afterwards and like how you're like a stronger person. I think those are like the ways that you can manage struggle without jumping over into the like way too much zone.
Oh my God, these are such awesome pieces of advices, both Shilpa and I mean, just to, and I'm going to say, go back to my son and tell him all of this. Scars versus wounds. And
Yeah.
is this a story that you would tell somebody in person? If yes, then write it. If no, then don't write it. Those are, I
Yes.
think, great, rules of thumb that we can actually follow and say how much is too much to put in and how much struggle to actually put out there versus not. But the scar versus wound, you are so right about it, Amy. And I think we as adults also struggle on how much to share versus not share.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
um,
and Lavanya, if I can add to that, I mean, I love what Amy said. She's absolutely right. She's much more eloquent than I am because I just say stay away from that prompt. And usually there's something else that you could choose, usually, although I don't know for sure right now this year. But I would add is if for whatever reason you do choose to do it, like Amy said, make the struggle piece of it, as she said, very quick
Mhm.
and make sure that you end that paragraph or essay prompt with what you got out of this
Mhm.
struggle,
Yep.
and that it's not a struggle anymore.
right.
Right. It's a victory.
Because
Yeah.
please think of these colleges as much as their educational forums. They do have to make money. They do have to run. They do need you as a student or a parent to pay their tuition. And if they think your struggle
Yeah.
is such that you're going to have to take a leave,
Yeah.
you might not be the candidate that they want to put at the top of their admission list. So just
Yeah.
think about that.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Very well said. And thanks for not mincing any words there. And that's extremely helpful. A lot of seniors today are spending probably 5 to 6 hours every day writing essays. So, Shilpa, you read the essays. Tell me one thing. How much weight does an essay really carry in admission decisions at especially selective schools like UMich or CMU, etc.? How important are essays?
So, I'm not sure that I know 100% the answer to this question. In the last few years, where the SAT and ACT were more optional, and for schools where it was optional, I have to believe that the essays really helped the readers and the school understand who you were. And one of the things I always told my son was, it's the school is deciding whether you're a good fit for their school. You, as a student, don't actually know the school that well. My son used to say stuff like, well, I'm not applying to that school. I don't like that city. And I would say, what? What are you going to do in the city? You're supposed to be at school, right? So it's like, unfortunately, there are a lot of other decisions that go into, well, why you apply to a certain school or not. And for a reader, it's more about how does this essay help me understand who this person is? I don't know how much it will count or not count going forward. And I say that only because of what Amy said earlier. We are now living in a chat GPT world where, gosh, the readers don't even know who you are. See, school teachers, and I'm sure Amy can very quickly figure out if ChatGPT wrote an essay for somebody because she knows that somebody.
Right.
And she'd be like, that's not their voice. That's so ridiculous. Just like teachers can figure it out. Readers like me, I might not be able to figure it out. I don't use ChatGPT. I do hear there's some application now that's like an anti Chat GPT, but unless the school has programmed things like that to check if your essay is
AI
problematic or not.
generated. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. But I would say is whether it's that important or not, you should take every piece of the application seriously and important. And if you can't and you don't want to, then don't waste your money because you're the one sending a check in.
Right.
They might not even read it. It might not even meet the qualifications to be read. Yeah. So that's all that I would say. I know students work so hard. I know parents work even harder, and so do the teachers to give you the support. And if you're just going to kind of blow it off, then just don't apply. Go to the school that you want to spend time on because the reader is going to notice that you took the time.
Right. Absolutely. And you're absolutely right, Shilpa. There are certain tools out there which can see if the content was AI generated or not, but we don't know how many schools are really using it. So I think it's always better to be more cautious, use tools to give you a structure or a framework, but not really the words or the content. That's well said. Amy, one of the personal things that I spoke to my son when we started writing essays was about, again, maybe a struggle question or something. And he said, I really don't have a lot of struggles to write about. I don't think I'll have a strong story. So when students feel, and especially, again, we're talking about California, Bay Area, if a student feels they don't have a big story to say, how do you guide them to find a meaningful essay topic? And how do you work with your students to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, we hear that a lot, right? And it kind of goes back to, what Shilpa had said before, like there's nothing worse than the manufactured story, right? And so, hey, how wonderful for a kiddo to be at this point in their life and say, like, I don't have a gigantic story to write about. I'm like, that's amazing. It doesn't mean that you still can't write a really, really effective, piece give a piece of yourself in this. So one of the things, I'll say to students is, you can focus on small, like specific moments or like interests that you have, as long as after when it's been read, it reveals something about your character, maybe like a unique perspective that you have or like a value that you have. So it doesn't always have to be, writing about this big giant thing. You can actually take like an everyday experience. And if you're kind of providing insight into who you are as you talk about that specific, kind of everyday experience, that can sometimes be as effective as a tall tale that somebody tells, where the reader might get to the end of it and be like, I'm not sure if this is actually true. I've read some student work where they're writing about like an academic subject that they're really passionate about. And again, I learn about them at the end. And I say to them, okay, you're writing about this subject. I can tell how important it is to you. And you're sending this to a school that is known for having that like area of discipline, like be like an area of strength for them. So now as a reader, like as Shilpa said, I'm not, as a reader, I'm not judging the student, like good student, bad student. My job as an admissions reader, right? Does this student match with my school? So that can be an effective way to go about it as well. Like you really focus on like an academic subject that you like and talk about it. Um, you know, I say to students, you can talk about a world event as long as it's not COVID. But again, if it's a world event that's like really changed your
Right,
perspective,
right.
right? So you're not writing about the world event and you're not writing about it like it's woe is me, but like this thing happened and then after, as the reader, I'm done. I'm like, wow, I really understand this student's perspective on X. And that feels really, really in alignment with the campus that they're applying to. So it doesn't have to be a big story. I don't want people to be afraid of that or feel like they need to make something up because
Mhm.
I feel like that comes through. Where you're like, someone's just adding extra words and extra elements to this, and it doesn't sound real.
Right, right, absolutely. Because one of the prompts in Common App was, tell me about a time when you challenged an idea and what did you do about it? And my son started writing about how he challenged affirmative action when he went through ethnic studies in his ninth grade and what he wrote about it. And he wrote to a senator and something like he did something about it. Yet he held back on that story because he felt I cannot write about affirmative action to all of these Common App colleges that I'm applying to. I think it'll be held against me. And then he just retracted the whole thing and he's writing a different prompt. But yes, how much is too much or how much is too bad?
Yeah,
There's
yeah, yeah.
always that fine line. Um, so there's a question actually from the audience. The question is, and please, Shilpa and Amy, feel free to pick
Sure,
the
sure.
question. Had a question for kids who are undecided what to pursue. How do they go about writing an essay? Especially I think there are
Undecided.
prompts about what is your passion, what subject are you trying to pursue, and how do you think Princeton is going to help you achieve that, for example. So if the kids are undecided, how should they go about writing such prompts and essays?
So I would go back to what, at least my response to this would be what Amy and I just said a little bit ago is you can easily be undecided. You don't have to have your whole life figured out now. Most people don't. And a lot of a lot of students who may seem like they do, they probably really don't. It's just they kind of program themselves to say, yes, I want to do this. I think what's most important is you take some time to understand what the school represents, to Amy's point. Um, is it a public university? Or will the classes be very large?
Yeah.
Or will you be at a small private school? How will things be different? Right? Understand. And at least a few years ago, it wasn't that hard to figure out what kinds of kids they take, what are they looking for. A lot of them, they say it right in their instructions, right, and prompts that they're looking for. They'll look at this from a holistic perspective. Others might say we are looking for folks that are going to like to do a lot of research or are ones that have an interest in sports. Like, I'm not going to say I know everything about every school that you could apply to, but I do know that I have read many applications for the University of Michigan where the person was undecided
Mhm.
in their major, and what made their essays good was for them to tell me why they were a great fit for that school. And if they had the opportunity to attend it, what are the things that they were going to try to learn at that school? Like it might be, oh, there is and I'm just making this up, there's a juvenile justice program that they could participate in, or there is a biology genetics research that maybe they could apply to, or there's an honors program. At Michigan, there's a really awesome honors program, and a lot of people say, gosh, I'm not sure what I want to pursue, but their honors program is so impressive, and this is why I am a good fit for it. Does that help?
Makes sense. Perfect. So do your research
Okay.
on the organization, even if you're undecided, and see how
Yeah,
you would
it's
fit.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. Yeah. And I think that most students that I've come across that say they absolutely know, they end up changing their mind. So they
Yeah,
really didn't
exactly.
know.
Hey, we change our minds.
Yeah, we want them to change their mind. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, so folks, please feel free to drop in your questions and we'll pick up as we go. Amy, a couple more questions on PIQs, and maybe I'll combine a couple of them just to see how it makes sense. Before students start writing their PIQs, do you recommend an order in which they should write? Does order matter? And what kind of topics should they avoid in PIQs?
Yeah, yeah. I love the what topics to avoid in PIQs. Um, okay, so it's interesting because Shilpa, you said that sometimes you don't even get like all the supplementals. You'll get, some of them. A lot of the admissions folks I talk to, they do. And so it's just different school to school. So I always say, since you don't know, right? You don't know. But as far as order of your PIQs, simplest way to think about it is every time I want to say buy an album, but I'm really dating myself, right? Or a CD, everyone's like, what is that? But generally speaking, right? We go and purchase something, it's got 15 songs on it, and the best songs are at the beginning. So when I'm thinking about that, there's a chance that one reader is going to read my four PIQs or my supplementals all together. You want them all to be strong. I'm not trying to say that, but I definitely think like where do you think what's your most impactful of your supplementals of your PIQs, and you want to list them in that order. Just think of it like a playlist, right? And again, the idea is that you want all four songs, all four of your PIQs to be good, but that's how I would just tell students in a simple way to think about ordering them. Okay. Topics to avoid. I've asked this question to so many people, and I feel like the vast majority of people say the same answer. So anybody who's listening, like avoid these, like truly avoid these. The big performer. We've all heard at a party a 15 million people say, and I got up to give a speech and I couldn't remember any of the words. And then magically they all came back to me, or I was in the school play and I couldn't remember anything. And magically it all came back to me. So the big performer, it's been done. It's been done. Don't do it. Big game. So I got performer. I'm like, avoid the big game. Similarly, I'm the author and I'm going to tell you how I either scored the winning touchdown or I fumbled the ball and lost the game. So either one, avoid. Big game. We've heard it. We've heard it. We've heard it. Um, Sports injury, though it could be kind of any injury, but like, think of it in terms of I'm reading something and it's, again, we've read it a million times. Soccer's my life. The first game of the soccer season, I break my leg and I'm despondent, but then I become the assistant coach and everything's great. Not to say that that's not traumatic if that happened to you, but we've heard that story. And then the last one that I would just also throw in there in caution, and this is kind of more coming out of the school that I work in because there's a lot of mission trips and a lot of community service that happens there. But students want to do this thing where they'll want to write about like their mission time, and they do one of two things that I'm like, please, please, please avoid, where they go and they visit a place. And they come back and they're so grateful because I have so much versus these other people, right? And that can come off as really disingenuous at times. Um, or I go on a mission trip and my intention was I was going to go and be the teacher on the mission trip, but I ended up being the learner on the mission trip. That's just an old one too. So I would say like those are kind of like the four across the board that like we all have heard someone tell a version of those stories. So like again, think of Shilpa. She's reading for hours at a clip. Avoid those. Stay away from those.
So something that really stands out for you, Amy, like what have you read in the recent past that really stood out for you from a PIQ standpoint?
Yeah, I want to know about you, but I just want to know something that's just like just really specific to you as an individual, right?
Right.
So yeah, so the sports injury thing has been done, but maybe when you did this, huge project in your environmental science class, right? And then you came home and you thought about like all the different ways that your family like just doesn't take care of the environment. And so this like one thing spurred this whole, I read that and I know something very specific about you, what your interest is, and your motivation to like get something done versus a story that we've heard a million times.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Um, Shilpa, have you ever,
Oh,
again,
can I
switching back?
just, two
Sure, sure,
seconds, can I just
sure.
add to that?
Yeah.
Um, I'd like to just say, in the current environment, I would stay away from politics completely. Like, and for parents, I would say absolutely no. You don't know who's reading it
Yeah.
on the other side, so please don't get into that trap. Okay,
Good
and this
one.
is just from my heart. The second thing I wrote down here was be careful how you communicate community service
Mm,
and volunteer work. To Amy's point, think about if you are on a certain volunteer committee or you've gone into town and you've done some work. By no means is the work that you've done not important. It is very important, and you definitely have helped the folks that you intended to help. But it may not differentiate you when we're reading 100 essays. If you picked up trash at the beach,
yeah.
you can tell me you picked up trash at the beach, but then very quickly tell me what it meant to you, why you're telling me about it, and
Yeah.
why it's important. So
Yeah.
be careful to fall into that volunteer trap
Yeah.
of, because all of those things, or you went and you served the homeless and you did this. These are all great things. So you deserve all the recognition for doing them, but keep it out of essays unless you're connecting it to something that is unique about you. And the last thing I would say is be careful when you talk about sports.
Oh, right.
Okay? You could be the number one, the number five. You could be the D1, the D3. I don't really care. The point is, think about how many students are going to talk about sports. I know at one point Michigan used to say, don't even read the essay unless the person was the captain.
Mm,
Don't even read
Wow.
it because it's really about how quickly you can get through these essays, right? And
true.
that would never be me. I probably am like a snail's pace reader because I just, like I said, it's my solitude. I get in my room, I shut the door, and I'm like really just excited with my coffee to read these essays. But just be very careful what you say about them. And the reason I say that is you have other places in the application
Yeah.
to talk about your sports, your awards, how good you are. And even if you're a captain, you're going to put that in the leadership.
Mhm.
Right.
Unless you've done something with that, don't write an essay about it. You have many other things to write about.
Yep.
Got it. There's
Okay.
actually a prompt which talks about your civic duty, and I forgot which college essay that was. And my son started writing about his civic work that he's done. So, Shilpa, spoiler alert, a bipartisan essay is coming your way.
Oh,
It starts with bipartisanship and then how Neil navigates through all of that, but it's coming your way, just FYI. So, there is a deep dipping of the toes into politics in that essay. But that's a great point to keep away from sports and essays, and, sorry, and politics,
Yeah.
etc. We'll keep that in mind. We are almost top of the hour, so I'll finish with a question for both of you. If you could give just one piece of essay advice to students applying this fall, whether it's about PIQs and making it like more personal or whatever, What is that one piece of advice students should know in this fall as they're applying for colleges?
All right, okay, I'll try to keep mine short. I'll say this, right? Because we've gone back and forth and we're like, make sure like we learn something about you in your essay, right? So after a student gets their essay in a really great spot, like we've looked at it, we've read it. Now I know this kid, but I don't like super know this kid. My last thing that I ask them to do is now take this essay and give it to somebody who really knows you. And all you're asking them to do, you're not asking them to check for grammar and start, we've already done that. I want them to read it and ask them one question. Did they learn something new about you? And if the person that reads that, even if they're familiar with the story itself, but at the end, if they're like, oh, I didn't know that thing, then we have done our job. But if somebody who knows you reads it and is like, yeah, I know that. I know everything in there, then we got more work to do. So that would be my final little like tip that I would throw out there.
Amazing. Shilpa?
So I guess, let me see, my tips. I guess the tip that I would give is these essays are a lot of work. One piece of advice, I don't know, I thought was useful, and you may or may not find it useful, is I think if you spend some time planning, right, and you know what schools you're applying to, if you're applying to the UC system, I felt that the UCs really help you organize your information. They give you more space to write your activities and leadership. And you can really, there's so many prompts that you can choose from. So I would almost use the UC app, and it's a little confusing because it's not due until later, right? Like November or December or something.
Right.
So some people don't even look at it till then. What I'm saying is look at it in August or September, where we are right now. Look at it. So that might be,
Yeah.
you can help you plan, because I do know for Michigan, there's always a cross in the Michigan prompts with the UC prompts.
Right.
Michigan competes very heavily with the UC system, and generally they lose. This year, Michigan, for the first time, has
Good.
gone ED.
Yep.
Okay,
Wow.
first time
Yep.
ever. And I think most people understand why,
Yes.
Right.
right? They need confirmed money and admissions.
Yep.
Okay, so keep all that stuff in mind. The last thing I would just say is don't turn in an essay that has grammatical errors or punctuation errors. Not in today's age,
No,
right?
I'm with you.
Reflects poorly on the,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's too many students, right, that are bubbling up in the same like awesome pool. And so I'm with Shilpa. If I'm looking at something or any of the admissions people I talk to, and you can tell that you didn't even bother with that stuff, it's
right,
not even gonna get a read. Like it's
right,
just going over
right.
here.
It's
Yeah.
such a put off. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Like even a text actually is a put off for me if somebody is grammatically incorrect or there's a
Yeah.
typo. I
Yeah.
and
And I
I
would say, I don't care if you use an editor to edit the grammar and make sure it's punctuated correctly. As a reader, we don't really care. There's so much of that out there. How can we stop you from
Yeah.
using it in a spell checker? We're not saying use ChatGPT to write
right,
essays.
right.
But what we're saying, if you're running like something to make sure
Yeah.
that you don't have any spelling errors, do that.
Yeah.
All
Put
right.
the effort, put the effort. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Amy and Shilpa. These are absolute pearls of wisdom that you've shared with us. And I hope the parents and the students can actually benefit. I've learned a lot, and I'm going to be on my son's case. Like, make sure that you do all of this. Thank you so much for your
My
valuable time.
pleasure.
And
Right.
take care, and
Thank
happy
you.
reading the essays this season.
Yes, and good luck to everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
Shilpa. Nice to meet you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Bye-bye.
both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.